Hi there, it's Amy from Cakes with Faces and welcome back to my series about my Japan wishlist of places I'd like to go in Japan. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas for things to do and places to go beyond the popular places you always hear about. So far in this series we've had Matsumoto in Nagano Prefecture and my plans for my sadly cancelled trip last year, and we also had Kanazawa, which is known as Little Kyoto. If you want to watch them, they're in a playlist on my channel called My Japan Wishlist. And today is all about the Izu Peninsula, which isn't too far away from Tokyo. I'm going to take you through some of the things there are to do and why I want to go there. There's new Japan videos on my channel every other Thursday if you want to subscribe. Before we start, I just want to tell you about my new design, Ramen with Bite. This is the sequel to my Katsu Curry t-shirt design with a cute tiger in a bowl of ramen noodles. You can get it as a t-shirt, a long sleeve baseball top or a hoodie. The pre-order's open now on cakeswithfaces.co.uk, the link's in the description, and there's worldwide shipping to any country. Right, on to the video. The Izu Peninsula isn't too far away from Tokyo, so it'd be a good place for a side trip for a couple of days if you want to see somewhere outside the city but you don't want to travel long distance or go too far away, maybe if you don't have a lot of time or if you don't want to get the full Japan Rail Pass. Atami and Mishima at the top of the peninsula are about an hour away from Tokyo on the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and I'll tell you a bit more at the end of the video about how to get there and how to get around. So while this is quite close to Tokyo, I think this is more of an overnight or side trip than a day trip. You could probably go on a day trip to Atami or Mishima at the top, but if you want to go around the peninsula to other places further down, you will need a bit more time, just because the trains and buses aren't always that frequent. But if you've done it, let me know in the comments. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that while tourists tend to go to places like Hakone, near Mount Fuji to get away from the city, people who live in Tokyo are more likely to go to the Izu Peninsula and places like Atami, which also has lots of hot springs. I thought Shuzenji looks like a really nice place to stay. It's a small onsen town and it looks really pretty. It's quite accessible on the train line from Mishima. And it has a bamboo forest, and if you know me, you'll know I love a bamboo forest. If I hear somewhere has one, I always want to go there. It's also one of those places that's known as Little Kyoto. While it's much smaller than Kyoto, it has some of the similar sort of historic traditional things like temples and shrines, picturesque bridges over the river, hot springs. You can rent a kimono and stroll around. It just looks really charming and beautiful. Now, the Izu Peninsula is in Shizuoka prefecture, which is known for growing wasabi. So lots of the restaurants have dishes with fresh wasabi, which I think sounds fantastic. There's things like wasabi don, which is a rice bowl with bonito flakes and fresh wasabi, or soba noodles with wasabi. And because fresh wasabi loses its flavour when it comes into contact with the air, often they'll bring you a whole fresh wasabi root so you can grate your own at the table. Fresh wasabi is a lot more fragrant and delicate than what you get in a tube, which often doesn't contain any real wasabi. It's usually just horseradish with food colouring. They grow it here in the UK at the Wasabi Company and you can buy it online. It's something I like to get for a special occasion. The next main thing I want to do on the Izu Peninsula is the 7 Waterfalls Trail, or Nanadaru. Nana is 7 and Daru is waterfall. And like bamboo forests, if I hear there's a waterfall, I'm always immediately sold. And this trail has 7 of them. They're from 2 meters to 30 meters tall. It's a bit further down the peninsula in the mountains near Kawazu. At the end of the trail there's an onsen, Nanadaru Onsen, so that's an option for a place to stay, or you can relax after the hiking trail, although it's only 1 kilometre so it can't be too strenuous. Also at the end of the trail, there's this unusual Kawazu Nanadaru loop bridge, which is a kind of road in a big steep spiral. They built it because it was too steep to build a normal sloping bridge, and even if you're not into bridges, it's still pretty interesting. Next, from the west side of the peninsula, you can get some amazing views of Mount Fuji. The west side is a bit more wild and less developed than the east side. Some of the places along there might be a bit trickier to get to. The train lines run down the east side and down the middle to Shuzenji, but there are buses that go to the west side, and I'll tell you a bit more about them at the end. It seems like you could get a view of Mount Fuji from a lot of places along the west coast. I can't say which is the best, but one of them is Hida, which is 50 minutes by bus from Shizenji. I don't think there's a whole lot there, it's definitely off the beaten track, but this cove looks really lovely and there's some stunning views of Mount Fuji. Another option for viewing Mount Fuji is the Suruga Bay ferry, which goes from the Izu Peninsula across the bay to the outskirts of Shizuoka city, with some amazing views of Fuji-san as you go across. Taking the ferry across could also be a way to continue your trip if you're travelling further, because Shizuoka is on the main Shinkansen bullet train line between Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto, and it looks like there's a lot of interesting places in Shizuoka prefecture as well. Next, if you want to go to the seaside, there are lots of beaches on the Izu Peninsula. Some of them are more built up and touristy than others, and as I mentioned, the west side tends to be a bit more wild and rugged than the east side. Atami is a popular beach resort with sandy beaches and palm trees. It looks tropical, and at night they light it up with coloured lights. And there's lots at the end of the peninsula as well, around Shimoda. There's lots of swimming, surfing, some of them have snorkeling. Really, there's so many to choose from, as you'd expect from somewhere with so much coastline. Some of them are sandy beaches you can hang out on, and some of them are more rugged with dramatic scenery like Jogasaki, where you can go hiking around the cliffs, see all sorts of rock formations. There's a lighthouse and an exciting looking suspension bridge. On the west side, Dogashima is also quite a dramatic part of the coastline with rock formations out to sea, and you can go on sightseeing cruises. Some of them go into this little cave which is known as the Blue Cave or Skylight Cave because of the hole in the top like a skylight. The light coming through makes the water shine bright turquoise blue. I'm sure there's loads of other things to do as well. Like in Shimoda, at the end of the peninsula, there's this lovely street called Perry Road with the canal and all those willow trees. It looks gorgeous. So you can see you don't need to go to Kyoto to see beautiful historic streets. The view from the ropeway in Shimoda looks really good as well. Next, how to get around the Izu Peninsula. It might be easier to rent a car to get to some of these places. As you can see, there aren't all that many train lines. There's this one that goes along the east side and the one that goes down the middle, although there are buses that go everywhere else. It's worth remembering that in slightly more remote places, trains and buses might not be as frequent as they are in the city, so you just need to plan around them. To give you an idea of scale, to drive from Atami in the north to Shimoda at the end of the peninsula takes just under 2 hours. Personally, I prefer not to rent a car, so if I went, I'd probably just figure it out on the trains and buses. Public transport in Japan is excellent, and one of the things I like about being on holiday is not having to drive, and to me it just feels more like an adventure if you're on the train. There are several train and bus passes for the area which are designed for tourists. It is a little bit awkward because none of them seem to include everything you might want, so it might take a bit of figuring out to work out which is the best. To get from Tokyo to the Izu Peninsula, a good option is the Flex ticket from JR Tokai Tours. That includes the bullet train from Tokyo to Mishima. You can go on any train you want, even the fastest ones, and you don't have to reserve. It also includes a ticket for the Mishima Skywalk and a one-day bus pass. Currently, it's 8,000 yen per person. It looks like a good option because that costs slightly less than the bullet train ticket on its own, and it includes the Skywalk and the bus pass. I didn't mention the Skywalk. It's in Mishima. It's a long suspension bridge over a valley with views of Mount Fuji. It's actually the longest suspension bridge in Japan, 400 meters long, and if you want something a bit more exciting, there's also a zip line underneath the bridge. So that was the bullet train, which is always more expensive. You can also go on the regular train. At the moment, that's 2,310 yen per person each way. That takes just under 2 hours compared to the bullet train, which takes just under 1 hour. So once you're there, you can get around using the Izu Dream Pass. It's valid for all the trains, buses, and that Suruga Bay ferry with the views of Mount Fuji. It's valid for 2 or 3 days, depending which option you pick. There's various routes in different colours, including this green Wasabi G route. It's up to 3,900 yen per person, depending which option you pick. Note that this pass doesn't include the train from Tokyo to the peninsula. It's for travelling around once you're there. If you want to travel a bit wider and go a bit further to Shizuoka, Hamamatsu and the Mount Fuji area, there's the Mount Fuji Shizuoka Area Tourist Pass Mini. That's 4,570 yen each for 3 days. Another option if you're travelling more widely is the Tokyo Wide Area Pass. That's 10,180 yen and it's valid for 3 days. That also includes Nikko, Kuruizawa, the Bozo Peninsula and a whole lot of other places, including ski resorts. This can be quite good value, but I think the issue with this one is having enough time to make the most of it, because there's a lot of places there and it's only valid for 3 days. There are also various types of bus passes you can use to get around the peninsula, and you will need buses to get to some of the places I've mentioned if they're not on those 2 train lines. All the details are on Japan Guide. They've got a really good page about how to get to and around the Izu Peninsula. It's really useful. Japan Guide is such a useful site, I use it all the time. And there are some lovely hotels and places to stay. One that I saw recommended was this one, Kei's House in Ito. It's in a 100-year-old building and some of the rooms have views of the river running by outside. It looks really good. But there's loads of traditional ryokan, onsen, loads of hotels, so there's plenty of options. So I hope I can go one day and go on that 7 waterfalls trail, try some of that fresh wasabi and see some views of Mount Fuji. If you've been, tell me what it was like and what were the highlights. And I'll be back not next week, but the week after on Thursday. Bye bye.